Anyone want to volunteer to read? Mataji? Okay, please go.
Yes,
You
I
have the
can
book,
read.
Mataji? Yeah.
Sorry?
Do you have the book?
I have the book, but I'm not sure where we left off the last time.
Okay. Okay, I'll just share the screen. I'll show you.
Yeah.
We just actually started here with the Diksha.
Okay. Diksha or spiritual initiation is explained in the Bhakti Sandarbha 283 by Srila Jiva Goswami. Divyam nanam yato dadya kuryat papasya sankasham sankshayam. Sorry, I'll start again. Divyam nanam yato dadya kuryat papasya sankshayam tasmad dikshiti sa prokta deshikaistatva kovidaiha. By Diksha, one gradually becomes disinterested in material enjoyment and gradually becomes interested in spiritual life. We have seen many practical examples of this, especially in Europe and America. Many students who come to us from rich and respectable families quickly lose all interest in material enjoyment and become very eager to enter into spiritual life. Although they come from very wealthy families, many of them accept living conditions that are not very comfortable. Indeed, for Krishna's sake, they are prepared to accept any living condition as long as they can live in the temple and associate with the Vaishnavas. When one becomes so disinterested in material enjoyment, he becomes fit for initiation by a spiritual master. For the advancement of spiritual life, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, verse 13, prescribes Tapasa Brahmacharyana Shamena Cha Damena Cha. When a person is serious about accepting Diksha, he must be prepared to practice austerity, celibacy, and control of the mind and body. If one is so prepared and is desirous of receiving spiritual enlightenment, Divyam Nanam, he is fit for being initiated. Divyam Nanam is technically called Tad Vignan, or knowledge about the Supreme. Tad Vignanartham Sa Gurum Evabhigachet. When one is interested in transcendental subject matter of the absolute truth, he should be initiated. Such a person should approach a spiritual master in order to take Diksha. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 3, verse 21 also prescribes Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shreya Uttamam. When one is actually interested in the transcendental science of the absolute truth, he should approach a spiritual master. Should I approach you on mute?
Yes, thank you, Mataji. I think stop there. So here, the reference from Bhakti Sandarbha 283 is given. Divyam Jnanam Yado Dadyat Kuryat Papasya Sankshayam Tasmad Dikshayati Saprokta Deshikais Tattva Kovidai. So here is Srila Prabhupada writes here, by Diksha, one gradually becomes disinterested in material enjoyment and gradually becomes interested in spiritual life. And when that happens, that candidate become actually fit for the initiation. So when we actually say Diksha, so this is a very important point because the actually formal Diksha, is given. So there is actually sacrifice and vows are exchanged, name is given. So that is a formal initiation. But the main point here says Divyam Jnanam Yado Dadyat, So the main point of actually receiving a Diksha, so that, the disciple is actually, he's surrendering to the spiritual master. And when that happens, the spiritual master instruct the disciple. So there is a transmission of knowledge. So that is a key point. It's not like that if you are just formally initiated, that doesn't mean that you become devotee automatically, right? You still have to be very faithful and loyal to a spiritual master, and actually you try to actually accept, not try to, you must accept all the instructions given by a spiritual master and implement that practically in your life. So when you do that, and when you follow all the regulative principles and chant the holy name, 16 rounds on the japa beats, without any offenses, there are 10 offenses, then Srila Prabhupada says that you will progress, on this path of devotion, and you can actually reach the goal of becoming a Uttamadhikari one day. So there is a process is there, but the most important point is the actually transmission of knowledge from spiritual master to the disciple. So that is a real diksha. And that's why even Srila Prabhupada wrote this point, that anyone who reads his books is basically initiated by him. So even actually they are not formally initiated. So reading Srila Prabhupada's book, and if you actually when you put effort to implement those instructions in your lives, then basically you are actually walking that line. You are actually accepting what Srila Prabhupada has actually taught in his books. So this is a very important point to understand. And Srila Prabhupada says that when this happens, by Diksha, one becomes gradually disinterested in material enjoyment. So this should happen, but in practically, if somebody get initiated, but if he's not losing interest in materialistic life, if he's still attached, then there is no meaning to that Diksha, he's not progressing there. So even Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that whether one is actually initiated formally or not, that may not be a consideration. Even the initiated devotee could be imperfect, can be influenced by Mayavadi philosophy. And even if other devotee who is not formally initiated, but he is chanting the holy name with a firm faith, observing the regulative principles and avoiding all the 10 offenses, then he's still perfect than the initiated devotee. So this is very important to understand. So it does happen, as Srila Prabhupada is written here, means we have seen, we have heard many realization from Srila Prabhupada disciples. Actually, when Srila Prabhupada went to the America or even the Western countries in Europe, so his disciple, when they actually accepted Diksha from Srila Prabhupada, they gave up all their materialistic way of life, drinking, smoking, all that, sense gratifying things. And actually they become a Brahmanas, slowly. So the Diksha process definitely works and is very important as well. As Srila Prabhupada says that you need a live guru, actually, so you can be actually connected to your Guru Shish Parampara. But this is very important that we should change, once we start chanting the holy name, start following the regulative principle, then one must observe the change in themselves. They should actually give up any anarthas or bad habits, that is actually can become a hurdle in their progress on a devotional path. So we see that actually everyone who comes to this program as well, we see them actually, they slowly started progressing. They start chanting, they give up eating meat or, stop drinking alcohol, give up onion, garlic, progress slowly. So there is a progress we can observe. So that is a proof. And when they actually become very serious, and if they get initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, then that is actually to say that actually it does help devotee, because disciple receives the actual mercy from spiritual master when he actually follows the orders of his spiritual master seriously. And actually all the sinful reaction from his past, actually from this life or even previous life, is actually vanquished as well. So that is actually good starting point to progress. So this is, I think we should understand.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, sorry.
Yeah.
I would suggest that when you are giving explanation, you stop the screen share,
Okay.
as requested in the past. Otherwise, it's a screen share doesn't show people, Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji.
While reading
Okay.
is a different thing. Once you finish reading, then you can
Yes.
stop the screen share, please. Thank you.
Yes, Prabhuji. So here also there is a reference given from Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada in his purport, Canto 6, Chapter 1, verse 13. Tapasa brahmacharena samencha damencha. When a person is very serious about accepting diksha, he must be prepared to practice austerity, celibacy, control of mind and body. So the tapasya is actually means the complete control of all the senses and mind, and actually focusing on one object. Where Srila Prabhupada says that we in Hare Krishna movement, we teach our devotees to focus on how to focus on devotional service, to Krishna, and that will make them perfect. So tapasya is very, very important. We have to actually give up many things, and we have to follow the regulatory principles, and we have to actually do various devotional services as well. So tapasya is very important. Also, the control of senses. So we have already studied this in text 1 and text 2. That actually controlling the senses is very, very important in order to control your mind. That way, you can actually focus on your devotional service or chanting as well. And especially the sex life, where is mentioned the celibacy. So one has to observe that, and that will actually help that candidate to focus on their devotional service and progress. Okay. Just a minute, actually, I lost my screen. Prabhupada also mentioned this point. One is very interested in transcendental subject matter solution. He should be initiated. He should approach a spiritual master in order to take diksha. So where he actually referred to Canto 11, Chapter 3, verse 21, Srimad Bhagavatam. Tasmad gurum prapadyate jigshu uttamam. When one is actually interested in transcendental science, absolute truth, he should approach a spiritual master. So the spiritual master also he should be a bona fide. So there is in that reference, it is said that any person who is actually seriously desire a real happiness must seek a bona fide spiritual master. And the qualification of a bona fide spiritual master is that he must have realized the conclusion of all the shastras, and he should be able to convince the same to his disciples, and who has actually taken the shelter of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. So that is actually qualification. So he must have studied all the shastras and understand the actual conclusion of the shastras. He should be able to actually preach to his disciples, able to convince. So that is and he should be obviously from our Guru Shishya Parampara, line of disciplic succession. So that is what we call is a bona fide spiritual master. So one should approach bona fide spiritual master, so he can able to help the disciple to progress on this path. As we sing at the start of program, we always sing this prayer, Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Shakshur Ulmitamena Tasmaisi Guru Nama. Yeah? So where it says that we are all born in ignorance. So when you approach the spiritual master, he can open your eyes with the torch of knowledge. So all this the knowledge is given by spiritual master, and when we accept those instructions and we faithfully become loyal and try to implement those instructions, then our ignorance can be removed and we can able to progress. So that's why the role of spiritual master, bona fide spiritual master, is very, very important. So going back to the purport. Okay, I will share the screen. We'll continue the reading.
Prabhuji, I have it open with me as well. If you... Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
One should not accept a spiritual master without following his instructions, nor should one accept a spiritual master just to make a fashionable show of spiritual life. One must be jignasu, very much inquisitive to learn from the bona fide spiritual master. The inquiries one makes should strictly pertain to transcendental science, jignasu shreya uttamam. The word uttamam refers to that which is above material knowledge. Tama means the darkness of this material world, and ut means transcendental. Generally, people are very interested in inquiring about mundane subject matters, but when one has lost such interest and is simply interested in transcendental subject matters, he is quite fit for being initiated. When one is actually initiated by the bona fide spiritual master, and when he seriously engages in the service of the Lord, he should be accepted as a Madhyam Adhikari.
So here, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this is a very important point as well, that one should not accept a spiritual master without following his instructions, right? So that is very, very important. Because when you actually accept a Diksha, you exchange the vows. So if you're actually not accepting the instruction of spiritual master or not following the regulative principles, then basically you are committing offense again against a spiritual master, and there is no chance for you to actually progress on this path. So this is very important that you have to be very, very serious before you actually accept a Diksha. You have to be very convinced that actually you are ready to actually accept the instructions very seriously, and you should commit to those instructions. Then you can actually expect the actually causeless mercy of your spiritual master. But if you actually get initiated and if you're not actually following the regulative principles or not really giving attention to what your spiritual master is saying, then there is no chance for that actually disciple to progress. So that one must actually understand that point. And where he says that one must be jignasu, inquisitive, to learn about the absolute truth from his spiritual master. So we see many people, they are actually inquisitive, but normally they are very inquisitive about materialistic things. They try to find out, how to make a money, how to actually find out the things that can give them a happiness or something like that. So people are very inquisitive about these things, but it's very hard to see people who are really looking to find out, who's God, or why we are born, what is the aim of the goal. So that actually inquisitiveness is actually beneficial, right? So that can actually lead them, So there are, we have seen some realizations from some devotees that they are actually looking for, looking for answers for these questions, and they're actually looking for the person who can able to explain them. So basically they were actually searching for the spiritual master. But not everyone is like this, most of the time in preaching, as we say, when I started coming to this program, means I was inquisitive a little bit, but not actually, I never made any effort to find a person who can able to answer this. I think and I forget about it. But normally, some people might be like this. Some people may be more interested, or they put the effort to find the spiritual master. But normally in preaching business, you go and try to actually, try to teach them, that actually you are not this body, you are a spirit soul. If you're really looking for happiness, how you can get there. So we actually talk about the Hare Krishna philosophy. We talk of the chanting, of the holy name and all them. So initially we have to thrust this knowledge onto them, as long as they are receptive, they are ready to listen. So that is actually one of the role of Madhyam Adhikari, that actually where he says that he is actually merciful to the innocent. So the innocent people, they may not be very inquisitive, right? But as long as they are actually humble enough to pay attention to what the actually preacher is saying, then you can become a merciful, and actually teach them, what is right for them, how to actually progress on this path of devotion. Who's Krishna, and why actually chanting the holy name of the Lord is very, very important. So all those things, that actually we try to preach to the new people. And it says that when one is actually initiated by bona fide spiritual master, and when he seriously engaged in the service of the Lord, he should be accepted as a Madhyam Adhikari. So this is one of the symptoms, of the Madhyamadhikari. I think we spent a lot of time last week actually discussing the Madhyamadhikari, and we also focus on the point that why he actually avoids the jealous or the actually atheistic people. So the first thing is that actually where His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that it's better to avoid the association with atheistic people, because that can again agitated our mind as well. We can also become disfocused because of that wrong association. And secondly, when you actually try to thrust this knowledge onto the atheistic people, they can their actually offending propensity can be again increased. They will start offending the devotees or the Lord as well. So it's better, and if they do that, they again actually further, they glide down, what is called, they actually deriding themselves, they actually making more offenses. So there is no hope for them to actually come back to this path. So that's why actually it's best to avoid the association when you are actually in a preaching business. So that is also important point that one should actually make a note of. All right. Okay, we'll continue reading, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. The chanting of the holy names of Krishna is so sublime that if one chants the Hare Krishna Mahamantra offenselessly, carefully avoiding the 10 offenses, he can certainly be gradually elevated to the point of understanding that there is no difference between the holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself. One who has reached such an understanding should be very much respected by neophyte devotees. One should know for certain that without chanting the holy name of the Lord offenselessly, one cannot be a proper candidate for advancement in Krishna consciousness. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Yahara Komala Shraddha Se Kanishta Jana, Krame Krame Tenho Bhakta Haibe Uttama. One whose faith is soft and pliable is called a neophyte, but by gradually following the process, he will rise to the platform of a first-class devotee. Everyone begins his devotional life from the neophyte stage, but if one properly finishes chanting the prescribed number of rounds of Harinam, he is elevated step by step to the highest platform, Uttamadhikari. The Krishna consciousness movement prescribes 16 rounds daily because people in the Western countries cannot concentrate for long periods while chanting on beads. Therefore, the minimum number of rounds is prescribed. However, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say that unless one chants at least 64 rounds of japa, 100,000 names, he is considered fallen, Patil. According to his calculation, practically every one of us is fallen. But because we are trying to serve the Supreme Lord with all seriousness and without duplicity, we can expect the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is famous as Patil Pavan, the deliverer of the fallen.
Thank you, Mataji. So here, it is actually the same point is again emphasized, where chanting the holy name of Lord Krishna, without committing the 10 offenses is very, very important. So we discussed this point in the first week as well when we started this verse. So it's very important. You should know what are the 10 offenses to the holy name, and you should actually recite them daily. So actually, what offenses you are committing and where you should focus to improve on those. So here is said that without actually chanting the holy name of Lord offenselessly, one cannot be a proper candidate for advancement in Krishna consciousness. Right? So this is very important instruction. So we are actually chanting. Most of you are chanting the 16 rounds. So, but the quality of chanting is very, very important. So if you're not actually paying attention while chanting, is also one of the offenses. In the 10 offenses say that to be inattentive while chanting. So you have to be very attentive and you have to also make sure that you are not committing any offense, against the other devotees. Or there are 10 offenses. You can read them and try to memorize them, and you understand what those instructions mean. Even actually preaching to the actually faithless person is also one of the offense. So we discussed this point as a Madhyamadikari, why they actually avoid the association of atheistic people. So that is also listed as one of the offense, because you do not want to actually preach to the atheistic people, right? And it is said that the some people who do not have this understanding and who are actually preaching, and they try to trust the holy name onto the atheistic people, is also, they do not receive the mercy of a spiritual master by doing so. So actually, you are, because you are committing that offense, you also become bereft of that mercy. So you have to be very careful, because some people, in the name of equality or being merciful to everyone, they actually want to actually preach to everyone they see. So that is a very important point. This verse we're discussing, that we try to understand who is the Kanishta Adhikari, who is the Madhyama Adhikari, who is the Uttama Adhikari, who are the atheistic people, right? So we should be able to use our intelligence to discriminate that, and we mold our behavior according to with whom we are dealing with, right? So if it's a Kanishta Adhikari, we should know that we must actually honor them. If it's a Madhyama Adhikari, we pay them in bal obeisances, we respect them as well, and how to actually behave towards Uttama Adhikari. And when it comes to the atheistic people, then we should know, we should carefully avoid the association. And so we should not commit these offenses. So when we chant the holy name, we must make sure that we're not committing offenses, so that we can actually purify our chanting. And when we do this, as Srila Prabhupada says, that we become a fit candidate to progress on this path when we do this, right? So here, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that the minimum requirement is 64 rounds a day. So this is very high standard. So Srila Prabhupada says that actually people in the Western, they cannot focus too long. That's why actually the Srila Prabhupada says that 16 rounds. Now he set that standard. So actual recommended is actually 64 rounds, as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says. If you don't do this, basically you are fallen. So we are all fallen, right? So, but Srila Prabhupada is a founder acharya, and he has actually set the standard of 16 rounds. So as long as we become loyal to this instruction, and we do this carefully without committing offenses, then we can expect the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, and also Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's where Srila Prabhupada says is Patita Pavan, the deliverer of the fallen.
Sorry, so, Prabhuji, it is not 16 rounds. It is minimum 16 rounds.
Minimum 16 rounds, yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. Minimum 16 rounds, yes. So, yeah. So that is
and
actually
initiation. And initiation is not exchanging the vows. Exchanging the vows is marriage. Guru doesn't exchange the vows with the disciple. The disciple follows and takes the vows of a Guru Maharaj instructing. It is a very important thing to know. Okay? Thank you.
Yes,
please be careful.
Yes, Prabhuji. So, okay. You will continue reading, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. When Srila Satyaraj Khan, a great devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, asked the Lord how a Vaishnava could be recognized, the Lord replied, Prabhu kahe, Yandra mukhe shuni ekavara, Krishna naam se pujya shrestha savakara. If one hears a person say even once the word Krishna, that person should be accepted as the best man out of the common group. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu continued, Ataiva Yandra Mukhe Eka Krishna Naam Saita Vaishnava Kariha Tanhar Samman. One who is interested in chanting the holy name of Krishna, or who by practice likes to chant Krishna's name, should be accepted as a Vaishnava and offered respects as such, at least within one's mind. One of our friends, a famous English musician, has become attracted to chanting the holy names of Krishna, and even in his records, he has several times mentioned the holy name of Krishna. At his home, he offers respect to pictures of Krishna and also to the preachers of Krishna consciousness. In all regards, he has a very high estimation for Krishna's name and Krishna's activities. Therefore, we offer respects to him without reservation. For we are actually seeing that this gentleman is advancing gradually in Krishna consciousness. Such a person should always be shown respect. The conclusion is that anyone who is trying to advance Krishna consciousness by regularly chanting the holy name should always be respected by Vaishnavas. On the other hand, we have witnessed that some of our contemporaries who are supposed to be great preachers have gradually fallen into the material conception of life because they have failed to chant the holy name of the Lord.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. So here, the reference is given to the verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela, chapter 15, verse 106. Prabhu kahe yandra mukhe suni ek bar Krishna naam sahi puja shreshta sabakar. So he says that if one hears a person say even once the word Krishna, that person should be accepted as the best man out of the common group. So I was reading actually purport to that, where it says that even the person, if he actually chant the name of Krishna with a firm faith, the actually sinful activities of the previous lives, they can be vanquished. So the important point, because ordinary people, they cannot chant the name of Krishna with a firm faith or conviction. But if one chants the name, or actually do the japa with a firm actually faith, then actually his sinful reaction can be vanquished and he should be actually accepted as a best man out of the common group. So that is very important. Actually, the Shraddha or the faith is very, very important, because without having a Shraddha or firm faith, one cannot progress on the path of devotion. Actually, this is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 9, the most confidential knowledge, that if one actually lacks the faith in Lord Krishna or in this process, then he cannot able to progress on this path. So Shraddha is very, very important. And all these actually three categories as well, the Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, and Uttamadhikari. So they are also actually divided based on their actually level of their faith and attachment to the Krishna as well. So the Kanishtadhikari, where it says that actually in a previous verse, their faith is very pliable, Komal Shraddha, very soft. They can be actually easily influenced by other materialistic people. Their faith is not firm. Whereas Madhyamadhikari, he has a firm faith, in the holy name of the Lord, and actually he worshipped Krishna as his highest object of love. Whereas the Uttamadhikari, he is actually at very advanced stage. He has full faith in a name of Krishna, actually, and it is also said that one who has a full belief, the name of the Krishna. So here actually what we just read, that actually there is no difference between name of the Krishna and Krishna himself, right? So that is actually absolute nature. So that is very, very important. One who has actually developed this faith, then he can be called a pure devotee. So how actually in the spiritual world, because we live in this material world and there is actually duality. Everywhere there is a duality, but in spiritual world where we say absolute truth, Srila Prabhupada was explaining this point, how it can be that there is no difference between name of the Krishna or his paraphernalia or his pastimes or activities and Krishna himself. So he gave the example of actually mango. So in this material world, when we say everyone likes mango, most of the people like mango. But when we actually recite the name of a mango, we do not actually able to taste the mango, right? We are not still satisfied. But in the spiritual world, the actually word mango and actually the mango, even if you say mango, can still actually, experience that, and you are actually satisfied, So that's how actually the things, that is what actually the absolute, nature. Actually, Srila Prabhupada was trying to explain that point. So that's why it says that there is no difference between Krishna's name and actually Krishna himself. Because when we chant, means we have this information, but actually how much we have realized this instruction, So when we say Krishna, so there is no difference between Krishna and his name, So actually, it's a personification of the sound. So this is very important point that actually it is said that once you actually develop this firm faith that there is no difference between Krishna and his holy name, then actually you have actually advanced, on this path of devotion, and that person can be called a pure devotee, if he chants, like that. But at this stage, we are actually trying to develop that faith, So that's why actually when we chant, it's very important to actually focus on that actually transcendental sound vibration. And that's why the attentiveness is very, very important. Because if you're chanting and if you're not actually listening, your mind is actually wandering here and there, then it is very hard to develop that faith. Srila Prabhupada also, points out. The conclusion is that anyone who is trying to advance in Krishna consciousness by regularly chanting the holy name should always be respected by the Vaishnavas. So yes, so that is important point as well, so chanting the holy name. So where is actually, implementing this instruction, they should be actually accepted and respected as a Vaishnavas. But and the last line, Srila Prabhupada mentioned this very important point that where he says that we have witnessed that some of our contemporaries who are supposed to be great preachers have gradually fallen into the material concession of life because they have failed to chant the holy name of the Lord. So it's very important that actually we do our prescribed rounds, minimum 16 rounds or more than that, and we do it regularly each day, So if you're actually not actually doing this, whatever you have committed, 16 or more rounds, then we are not progressing, And if you're not doing 16 rounds, actually, if you're skipping rounds, you're chanting one day, you're not chanting, next couple of days again chanting. So that is not going to help us, We're slowly going to again fall down. So that is what I actually realized from that. Actually, the Srila Prabhupada has actually reported that example there. Okay, I think it's 5:50. I think we still have 5 more minutes. Okay, I'll share the screen. Okay, continue reading, Mataji.
Yes, Prabhuji. While giving instructions to Sanatana Goswami, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu divided devotional service into 3 categories. Shastra Yukti Nahi Jane Drida Shraddhavan Madhyam Adhikari Se Mahabhagyavan. A person whose conclusive knowledge of the Shastras is not very strong, but who has developed firm faith in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and who is also undeterred in the execution of his prescribed devotional service should be considered a Madhyam Adhikari. Such a person is very fortunate. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya, chapter 21, verse 67. A Madhyam Adhikari is a Shraddhavan, a staunchly faithful person, and he is actually a candidate for further advancement in devotional service. Therefore, in the Chaitanya,
I think, we'll pause here. So, just before we discuss this point, I think I missed one point from the previous paragraph where Srila Prabhupada actually given the example of a famous English musician, who has actually attracted the chanting of holy name of the Lord. So he's referring to George Harrison from the Beatles band. So yeah, he's also a very famous devotee and disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Where he says that actually the example is given here that he has very high estimation of Krishna's name and Krishna's activities, and George Harrison has also written many songs where he's actually glorified the holy name in his songs. So Srila Prabhupada actually referred that example here And he says that in all regards, he has a very high estimation for Krishna's name and activities. Therefore, we offer respect to him without reservation. For we are actually seeing that this gentleman is advancing gradually in Krishna consciousness. Such person should always be shown respect. So, yeah. So, if you don't know, so this is actually referring to George Harrison. And I think we have seen some realization as well previously on this. So coming back to actually here, where the reference is given, the instructions to Sanatana Goswami by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where it says that person whose conclusive knowledge of Shastras is not very strong, but who has developed a firm faith in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and who is also undeterred in the execution of his prescribed devotional service, should be considered as a Madhyamadikari. So again, the description, more the traits of Madhyamadikari is given here, that he may not have developed the actually conclusive knowledge of the Shastras, right? Where we talked about bona fide spiritual master, Uttamadikari. So he has actually, studied Shastras, and he has realized it, and has a conclusive knowledge about the Shastras. And he has also ability to convince that to his disciples, right? So that's a Uttamadikari. Where the Madhyamadikari is saying that he may not have developed that actually conclusive knowledge, right, about the Shastras, but he has a very firm faith, Shraddhavan. So that's very important trait that is actually mentioned here about Madhyamadikari. And he's also undeterred in the execution of his prescribed devotional service. So he should be considered as a Madhyamadikari. So Madhyamadikari is Shraddhavan. He is a very strong or staunchly faithful person, and he become an actual candidate for further advancement in a devotional service. So such person can actually, again, by following this process, he can progress and become a Uttamadikari. So actually, just note this point that actually this is Madhyamadikari. Actually, he may not have conclusive knowledge, so that is one point, but he has a very strong faith, in holy name of Krishna. And he's also undeterred, so he's very loyal, and also he's very much seriously engaged in executing the orders of his spiritual master, or what we call as devotional service. So these are the actually traits of the Madhyamadikari. So it's a 5:55 now. So anyone have any questions on the topics that we discussed today before we can actually conclude this session? No? Okay then. Okay, thank you, Prabhu, for giving me this opportunity to speak on this first. So we'll conclude this today's session, and we'll continue from the next week again on the same text. So please actually read the purport again and come prepared. If you have any questions, please remember to post them in our actually intermediate WhatsApp group. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you.